Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to Projections, our show about virtual reality and augmented reality in its very nascent age right now.
True that.
So this year, a lot of high quality games coming out, and we saw, as we've mentioned before, at GDC, games coming on the Oculus platform being released later this year. AAA games, as they claim them to be.
Many AAA games. Is this supposed to be the year of the great game investment, at least on Oculus's part?
And one of the games that we got to get hands-on time with is Arktika.1. It's made by 4A Games. They make the Metro series of shooters, very popular on the PC, and it was kind of a big announcement back in Oculus Connect 3 when it was announced. This was their surprise game they've been working on in VR, a full-fledged VR dedicated shooter.
At GDC, we got to play the game. Norm got to interview the developer, and let's see what he had to say.
So Arktika.1 is a AAA, highly immersive Russian post-apocalyptic shooter. It takes place about 100 years in the future. Basically, the entire world has frozen over. The only even slightly habitable places, or comfortably habitable places on the planet are around the equator. And the game takes place in a colony in the northern territories of what at the time used to be Russia. The colony provides resources to the cities and colonies that still survive around the equator. And the player is sent in as a highly trained, highly skilled mercenary to protect those facilities from bandits and looters and potentially other creatures and things lurking about in the area.
So when you guys started working on this, and it's been over 2 years now that you guys are working on this, you guys knew you wanted to make a AAA full game. What was the scope of the game that you wanted to make? Was it the choice of making this game or a traditional PC game? Was that how you went about it?
It wasn't really a choice necessarily between a traditional game and this. Like we set out, we wanted to make something in VR. We saw the potential there, and we saw the potential to leverage our experience as a studio that is known for very highly immersive and believable worlds and story-driven shooters. Like we wanted to make something that was true to our roots and that was familiar to our fans.
What do you think VR for you brings to the shooter experience, and how have you taken advantage of that in your experimentation?
VR in general obviously is a great way to showcase immersion. It adds an immersive quality to almost any game that is played in VR. For us, because we typically make games that are very thick with atmosphere and story and believability in the world, it complements it very well. And especially when you add in something like the touch controllers, we're able to bring in a level of interactivity in that world that's already very immersive and believable. And especially for something like a shooter, being able to actually hold a gun and actually aim, down iron sights or down a scope, something like that, you really feel like you're there, and you really feel like you're holding that weapon, and it really takes the experience to a whole new level.
So in terms of mechanics, is the kind of game where you want users to not be assisted with laser sights and crosshairs, that you really have to conserve ammo and look down the sights?
As far as the shooting experience, yeah, we don't have HUD elements like in a traditional shooter. Everything is based around the weapon. If there is a laser sight on the weapon, it functions like a real laser sight would. We have hollow sights and thermal sight, and different attachments you can have for the weapons, and they all function in a way that replicates how that would function in real life. We also have a bunch of sci-fi and futuristic things that don't exist that we've come up with for the game, but they're fun and they feel real and they feel the way that you would expect something like that to feel and to function.
A lot of developers of shooters struggle with figuring out locking down a locomotion mechanic. It's something that people are still working on, but the game design kind of has to be designed around that if you are allowing users to teleport and I mean logically move around the world. How does the game design here adapt around the locomotion mechanic you guys have chosen?
So we've chosen to focus around a teleportation mechanic, fixed points that you can choose in an environment. Once you get to that fixed point, you're able to move around, duck, lean, hide behind cover. We have our gameplay is largely cover-based, and we have multiple different types of movement points that you can choose to help strategize in a combat situation. There are close points that give you kind of a strategic advantage, but might not provide good cover. And then there are good cover points that might be a little bit farther away. So you can choose to be closer to enemies, and maybe move up really fast and make a quick move, and then move back to cover to more protection. We also have cover points that have interactivity, so you're able to pull panels, move things aside, hit a button to activate something, pull a switch, pull a lever, things like that to bring a lot more interactivity into the combat experience, so it's not just standing there shooting guns.
Is there a certain distance or room size that you're designing around? Or the levels more like, based on number of nodes you have? Like, are there levels that are super expansive, outdoor environments, or are they warehouse sized?
Yeah, I mean, we have very large rooms. We have very small rooms and corridors. We have outdoor areas. We have indoor areas. We have a lot of variety in the types of spaces, and we build the combat scenarios around each of those different environments to add a lot of variety and interesting combat scenarios to provide a lot of interesting different gameplay.
Can you talk a little about the enemies and what type of enemies you'll encounter and how that may change up the shooting environment?
So we have a few different types of enemies. We have your standard soldier. We have a sniper. We have a heavy that comes in with a shotgun, and he takes a lot of damage. We have a super heavy that has the equivalent of like a Gatling gun, and we also have these mutant kind of human creatures. And the story with them is a side effect of our attempt to curtail the global warming that ultimately froze the planet. Caused mutations in humans that were reduced to cannibalism to stave off, starvation, and so these are kind of mutant creatures that add a little bit of a different type of gameplay, and we also have some other enemies that we haven't shown any gameplay around yet, but in the last demo that we showed at OC3 when we announced, at the end of it there was a robot. You will get to fight that robot in the game. There are also drones that are equipped with weaponry, and there's an interesting mechanic there with the drones where if they're on patrol and they come near you and they scan you, if you're not moving, they won't see you, they won't notice you, and they'll move on. But if you move or if you shoot at them, then they'll start combat.
Designing the single-player campaign, is there a cadence to how long these sessions are designed for? With PC games, people can play shooters for hours and hours and hours. In VR, are you finding that you have to kind of cater to the comfort and how long each session is?
So in each level, we do have a cadence to make sure that it's not just combat. We have different types of rooms that you'll progress through. Some have puzzles in them. Some let you kind of explore around a little bit and maybe find something. And some are combat. So there's a variety of different types of things that you'll do in a level over the course of progression in a session. We have found, initially we thought that that people might have fatigue or something like that, especially because the game can be rather physical, ducking and leaning and everything with cover. But normally we've had people play for long sessions and not even realize how long that they're playing for. So it's something that we've worked to tune to make sure that that it isn't too long, but it's not something that that has shown us any issue as far as like a long play session.
Awesome. And when's the game coming out?
The game's coming out in Q3 2017.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeremy, what did you think of our time with Arktika.1?
Well, it was probably and I don't want to get too hyperbolic here, but maybe the best looking game I've ever played in VR, just in terms of the graphics. I mean, and it is layer upon layer of finish that they've put on this game. And to their credit, they've been working on it for a long time. I mean, they said that they've been working on this since the DK1 days, where they were just trying to figure out what works in VR, what doesn't. And they make the Metro games, which are known for a high level of graphic fidelity, and they've brought that to VR. As far as the gameplay goes, I mean, we didn't play enough of the game to say, but what we played, it's a node-based teleportation mechanic, right? So you're teleporting between these preset areas in the world. You can't move freely. It's like you choose where you want to go and you zap yourself over there. But then they have the opportunity to tailor those environments.
Each of those nodes, where when you end up in front of a barrier or behind some cover or anywhere, those environments are made so that you have to physically move around and have situational awareness, see where the enemies are coming from, and then get cover and shoot them. And so it becomes about focusing on your shooting mechanic.
And the environments are interactive. Like, because they're tailored, they can set up where the enemies are going to be for that one specific area, and then allow that interactivity to affect your cover.
Right. You can pull up a screen, lower a window. It's not like there are going to be holes blown into. It's not destructible environments.
Right.
But every environment, like you said, it's tailored. Is probably the best way to describe it. Much like a game like Wilson's Heart, where when you're teleporting around each of those nodes, they know you're going to be facing forward. They know your attention will be in this direction because the enemies will be coming from that direction.
Yeah.
So they can design it visually and functionally to be best for that shooting experience.
And those interactive elements remain interactive, and you keep interacting with them, which is unlike Wilson's Heart, which is you get to an area and you do what you need to do and then you move through it. You're probably taking cover a lot. And when I played the game, I felt like I should have died a long time ago. This is potentially a very difficult shooter, which makes it a little bit different from the shooters that we've seen so far in VR, which are largely arcadey.
Yes.
This one, I feel like cover is a major component of it. A little bit like Dead and Buried in that sense, but less comedic and more serious.
Hit scan weapons. It's not a projectile that you see flying out of the gun.
Yeah.
The demo, I felt like, emphasized a couple main points. One was that this would be a narrative game. The first half of the demo experience, you're not even firing. Before you go through a VR training, you're being escorted by an NPC. You're in this post-apocalyptic, frozen-over world where these colonies are built up. You have to go through checkpoints.
You're a bit like Half-Life in that sense, right?
Bit,
I mean,
yeah.
Again, not to be hyperbolic, but it's a great way to do that, to introduce a game and to do that exposition, is to put you in a moving vehicle that keeps the environment changing and makes it interesting. And especially in VR, where moving cockpits have been shown to be a source of comfort for people, it's a good choice.
And even within that cockpit of that truck that we were sitting in and listening to NPC talking, which they're paying for the voice acting and the performance capture, there's interactivity there. You can lower the windows, you can look in the side mirror, you can open the glove compartment.
Yeah.
They make you make use of the things that you expect to be interactive in VR, because if they're going to put you in a car and not let you lower the window, that will break your immersion. And so it's bold for them to put you in those environments and not be an abstract environment in a game like Super Hot or even Space Pirate Trainer. Those are more abstract shooting experiences where it's just about the shooting.
Yeah, and compared to those games, those games have one mechanic that works extremely well, and it's just 10 mechanic, 20 go to 10, and you just repeat it and you play that over and over, which is great for those games. This game is supposed to be quite long.
Yes.
We played a third of one act, of which there are 13.
Yeah, 12 levels.
Okay.
Right, and even the 1/3 that we played, we went from the interiors to exterior to snow-filled levels. So it's crashed airplane, going through that, going through hallways, elevators. So it was a pretty long demo. Which is only a fraction of the game. So maybe when they say that they're making a AAA shooter, one, you're talking about they had to have a full story, a story that can sustain.
And all the cutscenes to support it.
And all the cutscenes and all the writing, that's expensive to make. Two, the visual fidelity, making the art assets. From building the interactivity, it's not just about building and designing a model of a car or a room, it's about also building in the systems, the interactive systems, to make sure when you put a gun down here, or you pick up a weapon, or you open that drawer, that's interactive. That's expensive.
And I'm hoping that that plays into the gameplay more too. Like, I don't want that just in the cutscenes. And I have read that some of the missions will have puzzle-based mechanics, which is fantastic. I'd love to see more than just combat from this game.
And puzzles meaning more than just look at the code on the wall and type it into the keypad.
Actually moving around and figuring out how to activate the elevator or something like that. I would love to do more exploration and activation of objects.
And then something else that 4A really prides themselves on is the combat experience, what it feels like to be a really satisfying shooter in the PC space or in the VR space. And we've played plenty of shooters in VR. It's as a genre, perfectly made for virtual reality.
I mean, it's at home on the PC already, right? I mean, shooters, all you console nuts, I'm sorry, it's a PC genre first and foremost, always has been, and so it's a natural fit for VR heads.
So what can a game like Arktika.1 bring to shooting in a game that's going to be much better than a Super Hot, a Robo Recall, which is extremely satisfying, more arcadey, or even what a lot of people are playing, like even on the indie side, a game like Onward, which is very satisfying, very realistic physics-based shooting. What is going to be satisfying here? Well, one, they have customization. So a lot of different weapons, and you can add in scopes, optics, you can put laser sights, different types of ammo in these. So the way you shoot your guns is going to change.
Yep, and I think the element of being under fire was more, it was a sense that I got from this game stronger than I have from other VR games. Again, it gets a little bit into the dead and buried territory, but even more so for this. It's not about Robo Recall, run and gun, and you'll get through it if you're bold enough. It's more about staying in cover, waiting for that opportunity, and popping out and taking a shot or two and getting back. It's about that sense of, I could die here.
Right. A lot of that boils down to just like the different types of weapons. Even when we play Rec Room, and we're playing the sci-fi shooting quest in Rec Room. There's a sniper rifle, there's a machine gun, and there's a pistol. Right? These are very classic just archetypes for different weapon types, where any gamer who's played a shooter knows high rate of fire, low damage, maybe less accurate. Low rate of fire, high damage, very accurate. They're taking these archetypes and playing with them with the different ammo types, with the customization, even with a revolver, being able to reload by using the top of the Oculus Touch controller and cocking back with the thumbstick.
Clever.
That's something I really wanted to see in a game like Dead and Buried, and we didn't see, and I'm glad that they're implementing that, because it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first-person shooters are my favorite genre. We've seen a lot in VR, and I'm glad to see this is clearly a genre that's going to work for this medium on the PC. There's been several attempts at it, and everyone's still trying to figure out exactly what's the best mechanic. I mean, what's going to be the Doom or the Quake that becomes the model that everyone else follows?
Now, the question for me is whether AAA, there's definitely money spent here. Undoubtedly, they spent a lot of time, effort in making something that's going to look polished and maybe be expansive, a long, I don't know, 6 to 10 hour game. That doesn't mean that this necessarily is going to be the killer app, the killer shooter app for VR. If you look at the PC game, the analogy there, it wasn't the polished, high quality, expensive games that are the ones that are still being played today. It's the ones that a lot of people are playing. You have natural network effects.
You're talking about like
multiplayer
a Team Fortress 2?
A Team Fortress 2, or even going back to Counter-Strike.
Right.
Counter-Strike exploded because it brought something different. You have some natural social elements of that. And I think it's more like a game like Onward I mentioned earlier. The Counter-Strike of VR, that may be the killer app, the killer shooter app for VR, than a game that takes 2 years to develop and however much it costs to make.
It's interesting. If Onward is that killer app, I mean, that's a bold movement mechanic. That is a game that said, screw comfort mode. We're going to move people through this world, and the people who dig that game have no problem with it.
But from a perception standpoint, for someone who maybe hasn't adopted VR, and maybe doesn't realize that a simple game, relatively simple game like Super Hot is one of the best shooting experiences you can get. They look at the screenshots, they look at the YouTube videos of a game like Arktika.1, of a game made by someone like a Crytek or a 4A, and that tells them, wow, this is a mature platform. This is finally worth my time investment because there's going to be a quote-unquote high-quality shooting experience. I would say don't be blinded just by the visuals.
Well, I would say all things being equal, yes, a AAA shooter is good for the platform, but it's got to be gameplay first, like you said. I mean, if the gameplay is not a home run, then, well, we have Space Pirate Trainer or Super Hot to fall back on. But, you know, all things being equal, adding a great story behind it, that's what made Half-Life so popular. I mean, that is a great fiction that they came up with.
Right.
As well as the cutscenes and the movement through an environment and the changing textures and the world building that they do.
I think that you're right. The world building.
That all comes with AAA. And if you can nail the gameplay mechanic to marry with that, then that's the dream. That's the killer app we're waiting for.
A lot of people want to play games because they want to be immersed in the world. And a VR naturally puts you in other places. Those other places have to be fleshed out with time and money, building with art assets and story. So Arktika.1, they've been working on it for a long time. It's going to be, I think, one of these Oculus exclusive titles later this fall, and we'll be looking forward to that.
How is this game still going? Uh-oh.
Oh, what is this? We gotta get the Jumbotron.
I don't like this
gun
room.
right here, Jeremy.
One bit. What are we shooting at, guys? Behind you, Norm. It's on the Jumbotron, below it. Oh, it's the screen itself, I think.
Yeah. This is a real sad choice.
Oh, there's bad guys down below.
Norm,
Ah!
can you get me?
I'm down.
Yeah.
Don't do anything stupid.
Okay, I can see out the window. I can see where you guys are now.
Out the window.
We just run in.
Oh, he's shooting at you now. Yeah. Yeah, kill him. No, he's back up.
No, he's back up. He's back up. No, go.
All right, he's at half health. No!
Our spotlight this week is a game that we've been waiting for a long time, made by our friends at Alchemy Labs.
Yeah, makers of Job Simulator. As soon as, I mean, this is like the VR killer app. In my personal opinion, whenever I have someone over who's never put on a headset, it's a no-brainer. Put them in Job Simulator, say choose your environment, and without exception, they have a good time. So when we found out they were making another game, set in the Rick and Morty universe.
That's right.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait. I chatted with Alchemy Labs, their developers, over at Comic-Con when they first demoed it, and it's been a relatively, like all VR games, a short development cycle to turn this around. And it is, well, it's a lot of ways very much like Job Simulator, interaction models. But in terms of story and the puzzles, I think they've really gone above and beyond in making it a game that feels like it's a part of this fantastical cartoon world.
Yeah,
so
it feels a little bit bigger than Job Simulator in a way. I mean, maybe you're right. I mean, maybe in terms of assets, there's maybe more in Job Simulator because there are so many unique environments. But because you can move around the spaces in Rick and Morty, and there's so many layers, like you could get through this game, I don't know, in a few hours. But if you want to experience all there is to it, it's deep. I mean, there's Easter egg upon Easter egg in this game.
So really, I mean, a disclaimer, Rick and Morty, it's an Adult Swim TV show.
Yes.
So it's not for kids. This is a game not meant for kids at all. And hopefully out there, you guys are big Rick and Morty fans. I'm a massive Rick and Morty fan. I know you are new to the series.
You know, I love Back to the Future. I don't know why I've never gotten into this cartoon, but maybe it's because I have kids and the cartoons I'm watching are a little more G-rated. But it's this was my first experience with it, and even if you're new to the license, I wholeheartedly recommend it. It's worth your time.
So the game is set up that you are a clone of Morty, one of the characters, the kid character of the show, and you are running errands for the heroes of the show as they go off on their adventures, traveling multiple dimensions and through space. You're kind of stuck in this garage. But the garage is also a lab, Rick's lab, and Rick is a mad scientist.
The first thing he asks you to do is his laundry.
Yeah. It's in the garage. You got to do the laundry. It teaches you the interaction models.
Yep.
Open the washer and then throw in the clothes in there. Press the button. Very Job Simulator-esque.
Definitely.
And then it escalates. I mean, there's a lot of using fake computers, like in Job Simulator. You know, repairing a computer, repairing a car. All of these feel like Job Simulator tasks. Because remember, in Job Simulator, we used a fake virtual computer. We repaired a car in Job Simulator. But to do that in the Rick and Morty universe with their dialogue, very heavy in dialogue in this game, was just, it made a smile on my face because it elevated it to a different level.
It seemed like it was a perfect marriage of two licenses. I mean, not being someone who's familiar with the cartoon, to me that was my impression. But it was like the writing was perfect for what the mechanics they had come up with in Job Simulator. And what I did like also is that the teleporting throughout the environment And you only do teleport in the garage, I think.
So there are two different types of teleport. In the garage,
this is true.
Right? You
this
teleport between 3 areas, workspaces, in the garage.
What I was going to say is I like that that was built into the fiction. I like that the teleportation wasn't just something that they had to come up with in order to move the player, but you actually see why it's working in the game fiction.
Right, and then the second teleport is actually teleporting to whole other places, from which you actually shoot a portal, or a portal opens up, you peek your head through the portal, and then it goes, it felt like going through a portal. It was super cool.
Also worth pointing out that this, what he's talking about here, actually requires some amount of room scale.
Yeah.
So this, a bold move for them, but worthwhile if you have the space, is that you have to do some walking around. So I'm not sure the game would even work in a 360 setup.
No, it's available on Steam VR and on the Oculus platform. But on the Oculus platform, if you don't have a space big enough, like a 5 by 7 foot space, I don't think you can complete the game. There is a comfort mode where they make the world a little smaller. You feel like you're a giant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the menu system, you can open a drawer and you flip a switch, and then suddenly you're giant.
Oh,
so it makes
that's small human mode, isn't it?
Big Morty mode.
Okay.
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
you're bigger Morty, and then everything is a little smaller, which means you have to reach less to grab items. They also do some things to help you. If an object's on the floor that you drop, for example, you don't have to bend all the way down to pick it up. You can kneel down and it'll hover and teleport to your hand almost. So little things like that, again, like you said, are built into the fiction of the world, actually enhance the comfort of having to run around and try to solve these puzzles. There's just one, it's a series of mini games.
Yes.
There's one mini game, just recharging a battery. It's a very basic mini game. I loved it. I love the franticness of moving my hands, twisting dials, pushing buttons. I felt very much like being in a cartoon, pantomiming those actions.
That's another mode that played with scale too, because you actually get teleported to a smaller version of yourself.
Which is one of the plot lines, one of the episodes of Rick and Morty. It's a sub-universe that's smaller, and which generates batteries. So everything is tied back to their story. Fans of the series are gonna love the Easter eggs.
There's another mode that is a little bit later in the game where you actually play a game within the game.
Oh my goodness.
And
this is a life well lived is all I can say. I don't think we want to spoil too much
I just want to say that alone is replayable.
Yes.
And you see things that you didn't see the first time.
Yeah. It's the Roy game, but in VR.
Yeah.
It's Troy, a life well lived.
I don't know what he just said.
I know, you gotta watch the episodes. It's a $30 game. I've had so much fun. The amount of minor replayability, the stuff that's outside the main quests of the story that you can just spend time in between missions without dialing Rick and moving on to the next mission, just exploring, playing with the random things that are in that world. I thought that was good pacing.
There's a combiner, which you see almost immediately, so it's no spoiler.
Yeah.
But you can combine anything in the game. It's sort of like in Job Simulator where you have the supersize machine, and you can supersize anything in the shop. It's that, but you're combining things, and you come up with brand new objects.
Well, it's like cooking. It's like cooking.
It is like
cooking
it's
in
like,
Job Sim.
Exactly, but I feel like it's procedural to the level that like everything I combine makes something new. It makes me want to talk to the devs about, do they have to come up with every single version, or is there a procedural element to that? It's really clever.
It's about making systems, interaction models where, what does it mean for a metal object to combine with an organic object? Which property is dominant? Which geometry is dominant? Or is it all custom geometry?
Yeah.
Like these interaction systems, which are no-brainers in the real world, have to actually be considered in VR, which makes this game a little more complicated to make than on its surface, which is the case for a lot of VR games.
Do you feel like the cost is justified?
I absolutely think so.
$30 game. I played it in one sitting. Now, maybe I spent 2, maybe 3 hours at it. To me, it feels a little bit overpriced, but then again, I mean, I'm not a Rick and Morty fan, so maybe that's a layer that I didn't have going into it. And I will admit that there are layers of replayability if you want to experiment with the Easter eggs.
It feels like there's a full story in it, even within the context of the 3 hours, just with all the dialogue, the surprise and delight I had in the game. It was just a smile on my face the entire time. Being teleported into a bathroom and picking up a turd and trying to mix that with something. Like there's emergent humor in the game. You talk about emergent gameplay and solving puzzles, but I feel like there's emergent humor just with the puzzle pieces lay out for you.
Comics are scared everywhere.
Well, Rick and Morty, Virtual Rick-ality. It's out now, out for a couple weeks, but I highly recommend it.
Both platforms, right? Steam and Oculus.
Yes, and hopefully, Jeremy, it gets you watching that show.
Yeah, it made me want to.
And maybe you'll come back after and play the game and appreciate the jokes again. Yeah. Well, we'll be back next week with another episode of Projections to chat with another developer and talk more about VR and AR concepts. So thanks for watching. Like this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
What are we shooting at, guys?